Hello beautiful fish lovers and welcome to Puff Daddy Reef. Today we'll be talking about Kessil lights, more specifically the Kessil A360we, the Kessil A360x, and of course everyone's favorite, the AP700. Now let's talk a little bit about Kessil lights. So Kessil lights are this very unique thing in the reef aquarium hobby because they are not an aquarium company that produces LED lights. They are an LED light company that produces products for the aquarium industry. And so they actually manufacture and produce their own LEDs that are used within the light. So Kessil is actually a company called Dicon, and so Dicon makes these lights not only for aquariums, but they make them for horticulture applications and for studio lighting. And so when it comes to light and knowing everything about that, these guys are top notch. So the Kessil cannons have been in the hobby for a really long time, and the staple of this is the A360we. WE is a slightly upgraded version of the 360 that had a little more efficiency improvements, and that's an upgraded version of the 350. So it's evolved over time, but has basically kept this same form factor. Now this has an LED cluster in the center, and all the LEDs are under a single lens. There are about 44 LEDs under this lens, and they have a whole spectrum blend from a very, very deep blue to a very bright kind of white, very clean, clear white. The light is very wide, I forgot how wide it is, and very well blended. You don't see any separation of colors until the very edges, and then when you look at the edges you can kind of see there's some purple, some violet, some blue, some yellow, so a good mix of colors. Now if you're looking at a standard light just to get in this hobby, this is a really solid one. You can't really mess it up. It grows corals, and it basically has settings that go from right here, white, 0% to 100%, and then also goes down to like a very blue setting to a very white setting. It's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see that blue, very good looking. The bright white is it's a very clear white. Now a cool feature about these lights is that they have these knobs on top that allow you to adjust the color and the intensity of the lights, and they are loved by people that are going to frag shows, because when you're looking at something on the reef, you're looking at a piece of coral you want to buy, and someone's got it cranked up all the way to blue, and you're like, oh, that doesn't look real, it's glowing too much. Show me what it looks like in white light. It's kind of a way that we sniff out, bad coral sellers or coral that might not look as good, is you just ask them to kind of turn it up to a little more white color so you can see the true colors of the coral. And with these lights, it's really easy to do. So you see them all over in coral shops, and especially at these frag swaps. And also they're very easy to set up. They can run completely fine without a controller or anything, but they also have the ability to link together, especially this version here. So this is the A360we. It's got the 0 to 10 volt ports, and you just daisy chain them together, and then one becomes the master, and you can turn them all up or down in both color and intensity. They're also great lights because they are they're kind of idiot proof. You're not given a bunch of slider bars where you try to come up with your own spectrum that the coral might like. It's basically your options are different blends of blue that Kessil's determined are good for growing coral. And I can attest to myself, I've grown a lot of good coral with these lights. Now one challenge with these lights, it is a point source, so it looks really good. There's lots of shimmer, but there's also lots of shadowing in the tank, and so a lot of times people like to couple these with T5s, as you see back in my system. The T5s kind of act like the dome of the sky, or the blue that creates this diffuse light that can go to all the other edges of the coral to provide that solar nutrition that the coral need from all angles without shadowing. And I found that to be a really effective way to grow coral. So now that you've gotten the basic rundown of these lights, I'm going to do a comparison of the 360we and the A360x. Now this comparison will help you see if you actually need to pay the extra $100 for the latest and greatest, or if you can be happy with this for $350, or even find a lot that are used for cheaper than that. So basically the new light, the A360X, is a little bit smaller than the other, so it's squished down, and I think it's 30% less volume total. It almost looks like it's about 2/3 the height, or maybe somewhere between 1/2 and 2/3 the height. An interesting thing that you notice is the buttons that are used to adjust the color and intensity of the light are also shorter in the new light, which is a nice touch. It helps the top of the light look cleaner, and you don't need the massive buttons to adjust your light. The smaller buttons work just fine. The power management of it is pretty much the same. There's basically a 90-watt power brick. What's great about these lights is that they disconnect right at the top of the light, so it's really easy to unplug the light from your fixture and then take the light and move the light somewhere else. And that part hasn't changed. I'm glad when they have great things about these lights, they don't really change them at all. One thing that you'll notice is when I said they were a little bit shorter, this one is actually a little bit wider. So if you have the mounting bracket that goes with the like a hybrid type light system, you're gonna need some other way to mount this light, because it's not gonna set in the circle cutout for this light. What you can do is use some of the brackets that come with that, or buy updated brackets and kind of bolt the light into place with these holes on the top. Now I talked about this light. It was really great, and still is very great, because I use these 0 to 10 volt jacks, and these are the same as audio headphone jacks. You can daisy chain them together, but there's also a cable that allows you to plug these directly into a Neptune Apex product. Now Neptune Apex product is a controller. Neptune Systems, it's a controller that allows you to control outlets and all sorts of things in your tank, and from this you can control the 0 to 10 port channels. There's actually 2 channels, and from your Apex you can program in color and intensity cycles to ramp things up and ramp things down over the course of a day. Do you really need to ramp up your lights and ramp them down? I don't really think so. You could probably just turn them on, set them at a good solid setting, but people really like to see the colors of a light on the Reef change throughout the day, and honestly I do too. Now one thing about this light, the old A360we, is basically you could go down to 15% intensity, and then after that it would just be off. So the light couldn't really dim down to almost 0. It would basically 15%, it would be on. This new light, you can actually dim it a lot, and I would say more like 3-4%. It's not like it's not there at all, but what you can do is with the additional controller, so you can actually control it with this, you can move different parts like the violet channel, and you can notch that up just a tiny bit so that there's like moonlights and that there's very little light. You can ease into the day so you don't spook your fish. So there's a lot of cool features there. So I talked about the size and shape differences. Another difference is the thermal management with this new light. So this one, if you notice that there is holes in the top here and then holes here, the air basically has a fan that sucks the air in here through a heat sink, and then it comes out the sides. This one has a really custom designed heat sink that sits directly on this LED cluster here, and thermal management is really key for LEDs. They've really got that down with Kessil. And basically it has a heat sink that's kind of fills up half this gap here. The fan is kind of sunk into the heat sink, and then it pushes air out through the fan blades out on this lower part, and then it sucks the air in there. And so that's a very cool feature. Thermal management is very good. It's absolutely silent. And so far, I haven't opened it up to check, but so far I haven't had much issue with dust here. Now these lights, the Kessil A360we, the older version, they do collect a little bit of dust over time. I've never had a light fail due to dust, but I have cleaned them out about once every year and a half or so, open them up and kind of clean the dust out. You can also get an air cannon and push the dust out, but it does bring in more dust because dust falls from above. It's pulling air in from above and then shoving it out here. These bottom holes aren't that large. So dust does collect on the fan blades and on the heat sink in there. So it's definitely a new improvement of this new one. Now let's take a look at the lenses right now. And so basically, like I said, this one has 44 LEDs, this one has 47 LEDs, but this one has a much wider spectrum. So the Kessil 360 WE, it basically has peaks. It has a very good violet peak down maybe around 380 nanometers, and then it has a peak at 420 nanometers, and then a nice peak at 460 nanometers, and then just kind of a tail off to the white region. This light here has a very good blend of light from 420 nanometers all the way up to 460. It's a very wide spectrum, so your corals are going to get a much more even distribution of spectra, and it still has that nice true UV peak around 380 nanometers, and then as it curves off, you can also bump up that red channel for a little bit of color on the red end. Just a little bit of pop, not too much. Some corals maybe don't like red. There's been some interesting studies on that. And then you can also bump up the green channel, and that will really enhance the perceived brightness. One thing that's really interesting about your eyes is they're not as sensitive to blue wavelengths as some of the other wavelengths. And so if you have a light running on blue channels, you might not actually realize how intense it is. So that's something important to be aware of, but the green kind of is a little more in your range of detectable sensitivity, so you can actually give that feeling of it being a lot brighter if you want a brighter tank. Woo, you can see kind of the yellow light reflecting off that. This has a very good optics. It's very good spread, and you can kind of see the light shimmering there on the bottom of the tank. Now this is at 100% power at 100% yellow, so you can see that it's very, very bright, and of course the rest of the tank just looks extremely dark in comparison. There is a ton of shimmer, and I love to look at shimmer. It really makes the tank bright, and it creates a lot of contrast between the light and dark areas of the tank. Now I have T5s to supplement, to remove some of the shadows in the tank, and I think that's a great way to go with these lights. But for some tanks, if you want a minimalist design, you could just have one of these and be really cool, especially for softies and LPS that are less likely to shadow themselves. So this light will basically take it from all the way blue, so this is what it looks like all the way blue, and I don't have a filter on this camera or anything, so this is kind of what you get. And it's very difficult to tell the difference between this and any of the other lights on all the blue settings. It actually, the Kessil Logic color is very similar and uniform throughout. There are some additional channels in here, and you actually get control over the violet channel in this light, which is kind of cool in a little bit. You put in maybe about 10%, and it does kind of add this interesting pop from different wavelengths that you normally don't see. But it's not something that you want too much of. It's kind of like candy in a candy store. So you can go from white to blue, and this one also you can make it go basically, you know, barely on with the knobs. So right now you can see it looks like it's actually light, but if you can see now, we can see the back of the tank because the camera is not having to adjust. So it is just barely any light. So I think it's like 135 degrees, very, very, very wide spread. And so you need it close, very close to the surface of the water if you want to prevent any sort of light bleed. So I would actually have to put this down maybe 3 more inches to prevent light bleed outside of the tank. And honestly, I like to prevent the light bleed because I like to protect my eyes and not be looking at direct light. But I don't want to put my lights all the way down to the surface because I like to be able to work in here. And this is a really cool part about this light. I almost complained that this was too wide, but for some reason the hobby thinks that we need really, really wide lights all the time for super blending. Everyone was looking for super wide lights, and I kind of disagree with that. I think that you should have more narrow lights and have them higher up. But it's up to you. This is one reason why this light has more power than the other light, but it's wider over a wider area, so the individual flux is nearly the same as the 360we. But there's a way that you can increase that flux, and flux is just basically the light per through a certain area. So this is more light but a wider area, so you're actually getting similar power readings. But you can change that with this really cool device. So this is a little reflector device. Woo! And it just comes on with like a magnet. So you kind of got to twist it a little to find out where there it is, where the magnet is. So these lights are cool. Another really cool thing about this light is an innovation that actually came out of the AP700, which was embedded magnets, so you could do different things to change the light here. Now, a great thing about having a point source of light is you can really do different things to really tailor how the light emanates from it. So this light emanates from the light. It's got a nice round wide lens. You can see it there. It emanates around 130 degrees spread. That's a nice wide spread. You can cover lots of tank there. If you have multiple lights, it helps reduce shadowing. If you don't have multiple lights, then I really think it's kind of worthless for it to be that wide, because it just increases light bleed into your room, or forces you to put the light really close to your bottom of your tank. However, this light is about 140 degrees spread, so this is slightly narrower than this other light. But if you want to make adjustments to this, you can just put this on and voila, the light is focused. And that basically, look at that, 0 light bleed. So light bleed, 0 light bleed. So now all that energy is inside the tank. Some of it bounces around in the reflector and bounces down. And you can actually see that line, because I have a little bit of kind of detritus kicked up here when I turn on my pumps, but you can kind of see that line here. So all the light is going down into the tank, and the way I have my corals and everything set up, at this height, at this angle, all the light is on the corals, and so there's no wasted light, no wasted par, and I think it just looks good because there's no light bleed into my house. And so this focus light now has a spread of 55 degrees, and wow, it really pumps up the par. So I was doing a test with this underwater, 4 inches, 5 inches from the surface, so a total of 11 inches away. And when I put this on, par was probably around like 750. Really cranked it up. So this is something that's kind of cool that you can do with this light that you really can't do with any other light. Another thing that's great about this is if you do have light spillage outside of the tank, you put this on, all the lights in the tank. It might even allow you to raise the light up higher, which gives you some more clearance to do stuff and work in the tank, and you're not losing light bleeding to other places. Because light spillage, any light that's not in your tank, is wasted photons, it's wasted electricity, it's wasted money on your lights. We've done a pretty good comparison of those other lights, but I do want to talk about this. This is the Kessil AP700. So this is their panel light. So if you like light panels, if you want the ultimate in slimness, look at this, even with the new one, so much slimmer, it's just out of control. This is the light for you, and this light has a lot of LEDs. So I was talking about the 360X has 47 LEDs per cluster. This light has 63 LEDs per cluster. So these clusters are pretty much the most powerful that they make within the aquatics line. And they have a really cool feature. They have this lens that kind of shapes the light into the shape of a tank. So most tanks are rectangular, and a circular light creates dead spots, and also some of the light from a circular light might spill outside the tank. But this creates a nice kind of oval shape for the light that really fills the tank with wasting very little light. And it's something only Kessil can do because of this particular design. The optics on the light kind of form the light so it falls within the shape of the tank a little better. So if you look at it with just this light on, this is a 5-foot tank, and this light is maybe about 7 to 8 inches from the surface of the water. And there is light, I mean, it is primarily focused in this region of the tank, but there is light touching all 4 corners of the 5-foot tank. So that is something that's pretty impressive about the light. Like I said though, for a 5-foot tank, you probably would want 2 of them. For a 4-foot tank though, it would cover end to end, and that's what I used it in originally, was a 4-foot tank. So overall, I think that this is a pretty good light, really optimized for a 4-foot tank or 2 for a 6-foot tank. It's a little bit of an awkward range for this tank, especially if I want to go all with one light. They tried to get in the panel game and they wanted to make something that was just, in my mind, maybe a direct competitor with like the Ecotech Radeon G4s or the Hydra 52s, and actually given the, you know, power output and stuff, maybe even, you know, slightly on the higher end of that. But the problem is Kessil was awesome at this, and all the reasons that people love their lights and bought them, they kind of forgot about that. They de-emphasized what made them great while trying to make a panel to look like everyone else. And in my mind, that was a big mistake. So one thing that's great about Kessils is it's really easy to, you know, adjust the color temperature and intensity, you know, above the tank. You can just twist it. You don't even have to look. They got rid of the knobs. They put this capacitive panel here. When this is up high in my tank, I touch it. I have no clue what I'm touching, what setting it is. It's even hard when you're looking at it. So there's no tactile response here. This was a weird departure from what they're used to doing. Another thing that was kind of weird about this light is that they didn't include a 0 to 510 volt port. So you had these lights out, and then this light came out, and there's no way for these lights to communicate to this light. It was a really weird, a very disjointed system, and I would think that most people probably have some combination of them. Like me, I run these 3 different lights all on the same tank, and there was no way to communicate between them. So that was a big loss. Perhaps they could put K-Link in and, you know, really had the USB-C connection, but they didn't. They wanted you to control things with an app, which was okay. Yeah, that's what the big panel light LED people have, but what made you different was these different ways to control it. So they decided to make an app, and the app rollout honestly was a disaster. Like, the app was very difficult to use. The user interface wasn't that great. It was hard to adjust the light up to what you wanted. You had to switch onto this LED's like own personal network and then switch back to your network when you were done. The whole thing was just complicated. It wasn't very user friendly, and it just it could have been more, but it could have been more if they had just focused all their efforts on just getting this thing out sooner, because this thing is amazing. But they didn't. So this is what we got, the Kessil AP700, and honestly, it's a really good light. It looks really well, you know, when you ignore some of the app features, which have been improved. So the app's been improved a lot. The light is now on firmware 4.2, so some of the initial challenges have been improved, but still the app experience is not the best for this particular light. But once again, you're not supposed to use the app that much. You're supposed to use it enough to get your settings set and then put it in the tank and forget about it, because Coral don't like random change all the time, people messing with their lights. You want good growth, just, you know, the more your hands are in the tank, people say, the worse the Coral look. You just want to leave things alone. So if you can get past this, this is a pretty good light. It works really well with T5s because it is thin. It's about the same thickness of like a T5 combo like that. So you can set it in there and it does look really, really, really sleek. It is the exact same width as the T5. So if you want something that fits really flush, looks really well, unlike the A360we, you can get this light and maybe even 2 of them in a fixture like this, like the Aquatic Life T5 Hybrid. But this is just kind of like a cycling program to show you all the different colors that this light's capable of. And so it really shows that this light has all of the, you know, channels you really want to create a nice blend. It's got the purples, it's got the red, the violet, the blue, and a lot of stuff that just doesn't really exist in this Kessil A360we, which just has the blend. But really, do you need your tank to be red? I don't know. You know, some people like red nightlight. Some people don't, but this is a really nice, even look for everything, and it's still kind of cycling up and down through the color spectrum. Now here they do have these little magnet areas in here, and this was the first time that Kessil really took that risk to see if that was putting magnets in here and putting on different lenses and stuff was something that they could do. This lens actually isn't designed for this fixture, but they added diffusers, and these diffusers would actually, you could put them on and they would help blend the light even more. But in my mind, once again, why do you have diffusers on a light that already has the best spectrum blending in the industry? It was a move that really didn't make sense at all. I like the idea that they could put different lenses on here, but offering a diffuser, all it really did is increase your electricity bill. It cuts your light output by like 30%, and yeah, it kind of reduces the shimmer lines, but the light is already great without it. Just don't buy the diffuser. Buy the light, be happy with it, and get all your power output and everything. With this light, you also got the controllability of the red channel and the green channel that allows you to create that visual sense of additional light, and the red channel, of course, to make those other colors pop. You do not get control over the UV channel in this light, though, like you do with the A360X, and so a lot of people like that. It kind of is like an alien space age kind of color, because really you don't see a lot of really bright violet coming from the sun, at least with your naked eye. And but if you want that, you got to have this light to get it. Overall, though, this has a decent spectrum that will grow your coral very well, and it has a lot of high output. Looks good with panel lights, a lot more sleek than this. But once again, it doesn't play with the Kessil strength of just the controllable knobs, the linking with cables and things like that. So this is my general overview of these three lights, woo, which I all run on my tank. So what do you think? Which Kessil's better? This is 350. This one's 450. This one over here is about 800 bucks. So just kind of think about that when you're selecting lights. I love Kessil because they're unique, because they're different. And I just like the way they look. I like really blended lights. I like the shimmer, and they seem to work for me. So my next video is gonna be amazing. If you are into these lights, if you have bought this light and you weren't able to control it because you didn't buy the spectral controller, or you want another way to control it, there might be something coming out really soon, and you will find out what that is on August 30th at 10 a.m. Come to my channel then, and I will show you what is up. So thank you very much for watching this. Now we're going to do a really quick drawing. So we're doing the drawing today, and we are just doing a random number generator. So everyone that subscribed to the channel, left a comment in the last two videos, you're in a drawing for a Puff Daddy Reef t-shirt. If you live in the United States and I can mail you a t-shirt for a reasonable price, and you win, please contact me on my Instagram, puff.daddy.reef.tv. And on that Instagram, just send me a message and give me what size you want, and I'll give you the shirt. So let's do it. And the random number is 25. So Prolific Breed, you are the winner. Contact me on Instagram, we'll get that shirt out to you. Also, the winner of the last drawing two videos ago, please reach out to me on Instagram too. I'm still trying to get you your shirt. All right, thank you very much.